"My father said you needed a wife," Madison Hale told the stranger at the orchard gate. Ethan Mercer stopped driving the iron hinge into the weathered wood. Rain clung to his sleeves. Beyond him, rows of bare apple trees disappeared beneath the gray Washington sky. Then the widowed father looked at her and said, "I don't need a wife. I need someone who stays." What do you say to a man whose greatest fear is not being alone, but watching someone he loves leave again? Madison had come expecting an awkward conversation. Instead, she found a quiet single dad hiding a past powerful men in Seattle wanted buried. And before this story ends, one woman will risk her father's legacy, one child will risk believing in family again, and one guarded man will have to decide whether love is worth surviving twice. Stay with this story. Like the video and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. 3 months before Madison Hale stood at the orchard gate and heard Ethan Mercer say he needed someone who stayed. He had arrived in Cle Elum with everything that still mattered packed beneath a blue canvas tarp. The truck climbed the last hill just after sunset. Lucy slept against the passenger window with her knees drawn to her chest and a red wool scarf wrapped around one hand. It had belonged to her mother. She carried it everywhere, even in summer, though she never wore it. Ethan drove slowly as the pavement narrowed and the houses grew farther apart. Rain followed them out of Seattle, soft at first, then steady enough to turn the mountain road black beneath the headlights. He had not looked in the rearview mirror since they crossed the county line. There was nothing behind him he needed to see again. The orchard appeared at the end of a gravel road, 12 acres of neglected apple trees spreading across a slope beneath the Cascade Mountains. The farmhouse stood near the center, white paint grayed by weather, one porch step, missing gutters sagging beneath years of pine needles. Rachel had grown up there. She had once shown him a photograph of herself at 7 years old, sitting on the packing shed roof with dirt on her knees and an apple between her teeth. Her father had taken the picture. Her mother had written the date on the back. Ethan still kept it in his wallet. Rachel had inherited the orchard after her parents died, but she had never wanted to return. Not because she hated the place, because she loved it enough to know what it demanded. An orchard did not care whether a person was grieving, busy, sick, or tired. Trees needed pruning when the branches were ready. Water had to move before the ground froze. Fruit had to be picked when it ripened, not when someone found time. Rachel had understood that kind of devotion. Ethan had not. Not then. He stopped the truck in front of the house and turned off the engine. The silence settled heavily. Lucy opened her eyes. "Are we here, yes?" She looked through the windshield. The porch leaned slightly to the left. A dark stain spread across the roof above the upstairs window. Wind moved through the trees, making the bare branches scrape together. "It looks broken," she said. "It needs work." "That means broken." Ethan looked at her. She was 8 years old and already suspicious of any sentence that tried to make something painful sound temporary. He got out, walked around the hood, and opened her door. She climbed down without taking his hand. The red scarf trailed behind her. Inside the house smelled of cedar dust and cold plaster. Ethan found the electrical panel with the flashlight on his phone. Half the switches did nothing. One brought the kitchen light to life with a weak yellow flicker. Lucy stood in the middle of the room. A wooden table remained beneath the window. 3 chairs surrounded it. Someone had left a ceramic bowl on the counter with 6 shriveled apples inside. Lucy touched one. "Did Mom eat here? Yes." "Where did she sit?" Ethan looked at the table. He did not know. Rachel had told him stories about the orchard, but he had listened the way busy people listen when they believe there will always be another chance to ask. "I think by the window," he said. Lucy studied his face. "You don't know?" "No." She nodded once, accepting the truth more easily than the attempt to soften it. Ethan carried their bags upstairs. Rachel's childhood bedroom still had pale green walls and white shelves. A faded constellation map hung above the bed. Lucy walked in slowly. She liked stars. She liked knowing where things were. "That doesn't sound like Mom." Ethan set down the suitcase. "No, it does not." Lucy placed the scarf beneath her pillow. "Are we staying here for a while?" "How long is a while?" Ethan looked through the window at the orchard, rows of dark trees disappearing into the rain. "Until it feels like hours." Lucy sat on the edge of the bed. "What if it doesn't?" Ethan had no answer that would not sound like a promise, so he sat beside her until she leaned against him. They listened to the rain move across the roof, finding every place where the house had failed to keep it out. By morning, water had collected in 3 pots and 1 metal mixing bowl. Ethan repaired the roof first. He worked alone because hiring someone would have required explanations, and he had grown tired of explaining why a man with his education and former salary had moved his daughter to a damaged orchard 2 hours from Seattle. He replaced rotted boards beneath a sky that changed by the hour. Rain became sleet. Sleet became thin sunlight. By afternoon, the wind returned, carrying the smell of snow from higher in the mountains. Lucy stood in the yard wearing rubber boots and one of his old jackets. "You missed a spot," she called. Ethan looked down. Where she pointed toward the north corner, water slipped beneath a lifted shingle. He climbed back across the roof. Lucy smiled. That winter, they learned the orchard by repairing what it revealed. The irrigation pipe beneath the eastern rows had cracked in 2 places. Ethan dug until his hands blistered, then continued with tape around his palms. The packing shed needed new support beams. The tractor started only when the engine was cold and the steering wheel was turned slightly to the right. The furnace groaned through December and stopped completely on the coldest night of January. Lucy sat in front of the fireplace, wrapped in 3 blankets, while Ethan worked on the burner. "Do you know how to fix it?" she asked. "I know what is wrong. That is not the same thing. No. Are we going to freeze? Not tonight." She watched him remove the ignition assembly. "You always say things like that." "Like what?" "Things that only answer exactly what I asked." Ethan glanced at her. "That is usually how answers work." "Mom said you did it when you were worried." His hand stopped. Lucy looked back at the fire. She had not said Rachel's name in nearly 2 weeks. Ethan returned to the furnace. "Your mother noticed too much. She said that was her job. She was good at it." Lucy pulled the blankets tighter. "Was she better than you at almost everything?" That made Lucy smile. The furnace came back to life before midnight. By February, Lucy had begun keeping records of the trees. She found an old ledger in the packing shed and assigned every row a number. She drew maps, marked broken branches, and wrote notes in careful block letters. Tree 27, no leaves. Tree 42, bark damage. Tree 61, rabbit tracks nearby. Ethan found her crouched beside tree 27 one morning, pressing her fingers against the trunk. "It is dead," she said. "It is dormant. It has no leaves. It is February. That seems like an excuse." Ethan cut a small line in the bark with his pruning knife. Green tissue showed beneath the gray surface. Alive. Lucy leaned closer. "How did you know dead wood feels different?" She touched the branch. "It feels the same. You have to learn what you are touching." Lucy wrote something in her ledger. "What did you put?" "That you were right once. Only once." She closed the book before he could see the rest. Work gave shape to their days. Morning began before sunrise. Ethan made coffee and burned toast. Lucy complained about both. They walked the rows together before her school bus arrived. After she left, he repaired whatever had failed overnight. He never called the people he once knew. They called him at first. Former colleagues left careful messages. A partner from his old firm offered consulting work that could be done remotely. A man named Daniel Brooks called every Sunday for 6 weeks. Ethan listened to the messages without answering. Eventually, the calls stopped. At night, after Lucy went to bed, Ethan sat at the kitchen table with the orchard accounts on one side and a sealed box of his former life on the other. The box contained deal books, risk reports, legal correspondence, and an employee badge from Rainier Equity Group. Ethan never opened it. He also never threw it away. The property beside the orchard belonged to Walter Hale. Walter had bought the land 5 years earlier after retiring from the healthcare company he founded in Seattle. He told people he wanted cleaner air and fewer meetings. The truth was simpler. His doctor had told him his heart would not tolerate the life he kept pretending he still enjoyed. Walter's house sat beyond the western fence, a broad cedar home with mountain views and a garage full of equipment he had purchased without learning how to use. Their first real conversation happened because Walter's compact tractor stopped beside the creek. Ethan saw him from the orchard. Walter stood with the hood open, staring at the engine as though disappointment might persuade it to start. Ethan climbed through the fence. Walter looked up. "You know anything about tractors a little?" "Good. I know nothing." Ethan checked the fuel line. A clamp had loosened, allowing air into the system. He tightened it, bled the line, and started the engine. Walter listened to it idle. "What do I owe you? Nothing. You always work for free, no. That makes me feel less special." Ethan closed the hood. Walter studied him. "You a mechanic, no farmer trying to be. What were you before?" Ethan wiped his hands on a cloth. "Busy." Walter smiled. It was not the answer he wanted, but it was one he understood. 2 days later, Walter appeared at the fence carrying 2 metal cups. "Coffee," he said. Ethan looked at the second cup. "I can see that." "Then we are making progress." Ethan took it. They stood near the fence and watched clouds move over the mountains. Walter talked at first. He complained about the tractor, the weather, and the grocery store in town that charged too much for tomatoes in winter. Ethan listened. After several minutes, Walter stopped speaking. The quiet that followed was not uncomfortable. That surprised both of them. The next Friday, Walter returned with coffee. Then again the Friday after that. Neither man called it friendship. They met at the fence because it was there, because Friday mornings were cold, and because each had reached an age when silence beside another person could be more generous than conversation. Walter noticed things. He noticed that Ethan calculated the spacing of replacement trees without measuring twice. He noticed that Ethan read property surveys as easily as weather reports. He noticed that the orchard's accounts were organized with a precision unusual for a farm that barely made enough money to maintain itself. One morning, Walter held out a cup and asked, "You ever run a company?" Ethan drank his coffee. "No." Walter waited. Ethan added, "I helped other people run theirs. That sounds worse." It was. Walter did not ask again. Madison visited her father once a month, sometimes twice if Walter's appointments required it. She drove from Seattle in a black SUV, usually arriving after dark with a laptop bag in one hand and a phone in the other. She stayed 2 nights. She checked the batteries in the smoke detectors, reviewed Walter's medication, restocked the refrigerator, and scheduled repairs he claimed he could handle himself. Then she returned to the city before Monday morning. Madison was 38 and had been CEO of Hale Community Health for 2 years. The company operated 22 clinics across Washington, including small facilities in communities larger healthcare groups considered unprofitable. Walter had opened the first clinic in a rented storefront outside Tacoma with 4 examination rooms and a receptionist who was also a nurse. Madison had been 6 years old. She remembered sleeping beneath the front desk while her father treated patients after closing. Now the company employed more than 900 people. Its headquarters occupied 4 floors of a glass tower in downtown Seattle. Madison knew the revenue of every clinic. She knew which directors missed targets before the monthly reports arrived. She knew the names of employees who had not spoken to her in years because she remembered everything that could become useful. Her office contained no family photographs. Her walls held maps, performance charts, and a framed copy of the company's founding charter. People called her controlled. They were usually trying to say cold without risking their jobs. On a Thursday morning, Madison entered a strategy meeting 8 minutes late because Walter's cardiologist had called. The room went silent when she took her seat. Grant Holloway stood beside the screen. Grant was the company's chief operating officer. He wore dark suits, spoke without hesitation, and could make an idea sound inevitable before anyone had agreed to it. "We were discussing expansion," he said. "I heard. You were not in the room. The forecast is wrong." Grant looked at the screen. A slide showed projected growth across 6 quarters. Madison pointed toward the 3rd column. "You used the urban reimbursement rate for the Yakima clinics." The finance director leaned forward. Grant's eyes moved briefly to the numbers. Madison continued. "It raises the projection by 4.2% and makes the acquisition look profitable 9 months earlier than it is." No one spoke. Grant changed the slide. "We can correct it. You can rebuild it. That delays the vote." "Then the vote is delayed." Grant's smile remained, but something behind it hardened. Madison turned to the finance director. "Send me the corrected model by tomorrow." Her assistant met her outside the room. "Your father's cardiology appointment is Friday. I know you have the regional directors meeting. Move it. All of it. All of it." Her assistant hesitated. "Walter said he can go alone. My father also said he could repair his own roof." "Did he?" "He bought a ladder." Madison returned to her office, closed the door, and stood by the window. Seattle moved 17 floors below her. Ferries crossed the gray water, cars filled the streets, construction cranes swung slowly above half-finished towers. Her phone displayed 3 missed calls from Grant. She did not return them. Friday afternoon, Madison drove east across the mountains. The city disappeared behind rain, then tunnels, then snow along the higher ridges. By the time she reached Cle Elum, the clouds had broken. Walter was in the kitchen when she arrived. He had ignored the meal plan she created and was frying bacon. "You are supposed to reduce sodium. I reduced it yesterday. That is not how sodium works. It should be." Madison set her bag on the counter. Through the window, she saw a man working in the orchard next door. Ethan stood beside a damaged fence, driving a post into the ground with a heavy wooden mallet. Lucy sat nearby with an open book balanced on her knees. The man moved with patience. No wasted steps, no visible frustration when the post shifted. He pulled it out, adjusted the hole, and began again. "Who is that?" Madison asked. Walter turned the bacon. "My neighbor. I assumed he did not drive here from Idaho to repair your fence." "It is his fence." Madison watched Ethan check the line. "What happened to his wife?" Walter glanced at her. "She died. When several years ago. And he is raising that child alone. Her name is Lucy." Madison looked at the girl. Lucy turned a page without looking up. "He manages the whole orchard by himself. He and Lucy manage it together. That is not what I asked." Walter placed the bacon on a plate. "No, it usually is not." Madison stepped away from the window. "Do you know anything about him?" "I know he makes bad coffee. You drink it every Friday. He drinks mine. That is not an answer." Walter smiled. Madison recognized the expression. It was the same one he wore when he knew more than he intended to say. After his appointment, Walter insisted they stop at a hardware store. He needed bolts for a piece of irrigation equipment he could not name. Madison waited near the register while he wandered the aisles. When they returned, an envelope was attached to Walter's front door. Madison removed it. The letterhead belonged to Hale Community Health. Inside was a formal notice regarding 6 acres of undeveloped land beside Walter's property. The company intended to sell the parcel. Walter read the notice. "They cannot sell it with that road. What road? The access road crosses Ethan's orchard." Madison took the letter back. "The deed includes an easement. The deed includes words. That is generally how deeds work." Walter handed her the envelope. "Talk to your neighbor. Our legal department can handle it. Your legal department sent that notice." Madison read the final page. A handwritten objection had been attached. The writing was direct and precise. The access description in the current deed repeated an error introduced during a transfer in 1996. The original easement ended at the creek and allowed agricultural use only. 3 earlier filings were cited by date and recording number. Madison read the objection twice. "Who wrote this?" Walter returned to the stove. "Ethan. Back in Seattle." Madison reviewed the property file. Grant had already approved the sale process. The buyer intended to build a private rehabilitation facility on the parcel using the old Orchard Road for construction access. Madison called Grant into her office. "The easement is disputed. By a farmer, by the title record. Our counsel believes the current deed controls." Did counsel review the original filing? Grant sat across from her. "They reviewed what was necessary." "That was not my question." He adjusted one cuff. "The parcel has been unused for 12 years. Selling it gives us capital without affecting operations. It affects the neighboring property. He will be compensated. What if he does not want compensation?" Grant leaned back. "Everyone wants compensation." Madison closed the file, paused the sale. "For a handwritten objection, for a title problem our lawyers failed to identify." Grant's expression tightened. "You are spending executive time on 6 acres. I am spending executive time on the fact that someone outside this building read our documents more carefully than the people inside it." Grant stood. "Legal can speak with him. I will speak with him." Grant looked at her for a moment. Why? Madison glanced at Ethan's handwritten page. "Because I want to know what else he saw." The following Saturday she drove to the orchard. Ethan was on the farmhouse porch repairing a wooden crate. Lucy sat on the steps sorting screws into glass jars. Madison approached with the property file beneath her arm. Ethan looked at her shoes. They were black leather, narrow at the toe, and entirely wrong for wet ground. He said nothing. "I am Madison Hale. I know. She stopped. How your father has photographs. He claims he does not. He keeps one in the kitchen drawer behind the batteries. Madison made a note to inspect the drawer later. I want to discuss the easement. Ethan set the crate aside. He went into the house and returned with 2 folding chairs, a wooden box, and a tube containing rolled maps. He arranged the chairs on the porch and placed the box between them. Madison remained standing. You expected me, I expected someone, not our lawyers. They would have called first. She sat. Ethan unrolled 3 maps and held the corners down with small stones. He pointed to a line running from the county road toward the creek. The original access ended here. Our deed extends it through the orchard. Your deed repeats the language from the 1996 transfer. That makes it part of our recorded interest. It makes it a recorded mistake. Madison opened her file. Our title counsel disagrees. Your title counsel started with the current deed and worked backward 2 transfers. How do you know they cited the same incomplete chain in their response? Ethan placed another document in front of her. The original owner granted agricultural access to move equipment between 2 parcels. The second parcel was absorbed into your father's property in 1989. The purpose ended then. The easement remained recorded for agricultural use. Madison studied the map. Ethan's notes were organized by date, instrument number, legal description, and conflict. It was not simply careful, it was professional. You reviewed the entire chain. I reviewed enough. This is not something people casually know how to do. No, what did you do before you came here? Ethan began rolling the first map. Something that required reading, that describes most employment. It did not feel that way at the time. Lucy came through the screen door carrying 3 glasses of cider on a tray. She placed one beside Ethan and one beside Madison. You can have that one. Madison looked at the glasses. They appeared identical. Why this one less cinnamon? How do you know I do not like cinnamon? Lucy considered her. You look like you do not like surprises. Ethan lowered his eyes. The movement was small, but Madison saw it. Is that funny? She asked. No, you are smiling. I am not. Lucy sat on the porch step. He does that when he thinks something is funny but does not want anyone to know. Ethan took a drink. Thank you, Lucy. You say honesty matters. Not every second. Madison laughed. The sound escaped before she could decide whether the moment deserved it. Lucy looked satisfied. Ethan looked at Madison differently. Not with admiration, not with interest he was ready to admit. With recognition. As though the laugh had revealed a person he had not expected to find beneath the coat, the title, and the carefully controlled voice. Madison took another drink of cider. It had almost no cinnamon. She looked down at the final map. A second boundary line had been marked near the creek. What is this? The creek moved about 14 feet east over the last 20 years. That changes the fence line. It may change where people think the fence line is, but not where the legal boundary stands. Ethan looked toward the orchard. People usually notice the fence before they notice the ground moving beneath it. Madison followed his gaze. Rows of trees descended toward the creek, their bare branches catching pale afternoon light. She thought about the incorrect financial model in Grant's presentation, the rushed land sale, the legal review that had stopped 2 transfers too early. Then she looked at Ethan again. He was gathering the maps with the calm efficiency of a man who did not need her to believe him. Her phone vibrated. Grant's name appeared on the screen. Madison silenced it. Ethan placed the final document in front of her. It was a clean summary of the title history written in a format her board could understand. You prepared this for me. I prepared it for whoever came. That is not the same thing. No. Lucy carried the empty tray inside. Madison stood. Her heel sank slightly into the porch's softened edge. Ethan reached out and caught her elbow before she lost her balance. His hand was warm and rough from work. For one quiet second, neither of them moved. Then Madison steadied herself. Ethan released her. You should wear different shoes next time. Madison looked at him. Who said there would be a next time? No one. He lifted the tube of maps. But you still have questions. Madison glanced at the farmhouse window where Lucy had left the red scarf folded beside the sink. Then she looked toward the orchard, the displaced creek, and the fence that appeared straight only from a distance. Yes, she said. Yes, Madison said, I do. The answer stayed with her long after she left the orchard. She drove west beneath a sky the color of wet stone. Ethan's title summary resting on the passenger seat. Each time the road curved, the pages shifted inside the folder. She found herself glancing at them as though they might explain more than a boundary dispute. They did not. The document was clean, restrained, and exact. No unnecessary language, no attempt to impress whoever read it. Ethan had identified the error supported his conclusion and stopped. Madison knew executives who used 30 slides to avoid saying one clear sentence. She also knew men who made sure their names appeared on every useful idea. Ethan Mercer had done neither. Her phone rang as she crossed Snoqualmie Pass. Grant Holloway. She let it ring twice before answering. Madison, you disappeared. I drove to Cle Elum. For the land issue, yes. A pause followed. Grant was too polished to sound openly irritated, but she heard it in the silence. And the recorded easement does not support commercial construction. Our counsel disagrees. Our counsel reviewed an incomplete title chain, according to the orchard owner, according to the original filing. Grant exhaled. This is a 6-acre parcel, and someone tried to sell it without understanding how it could be accessed. We can negotiate a new easement. He does not want one. Everyone wants something. Madison looked at the folder beside her. Not everyone wants what you are offering. Grant's voice cooled. Then what does he want to be left alone? That is not a business position. No, Madison said. It is a boundary. She ended the call before he could answer. 4 days later, she returned to the orchard. She told herself it was because one of Ethan's reference numbers did not match the digital index used by the county. That was true. It was also something an associate in the legal department could have resolved in 10 minutes. Madison parked near the cedar gate. This time she wore flat leather boots. Ethan was standing beside the creek removing wire from a fence post that had begun to lean toward the water. He saw her approaching and looked down at her shoes. You adjusted. I learned quickly. I noticed. She held out the folder. One recording number is wrong. Ethan wiped his hands on his jeans and took the page. He looked at the number for less than a second. The county changed the indexing system in 2004. That is the old reference. You knew that without checking. I wrote it. You could have included the new number. I could have. Madison waited. Ethan handed the page back. You wanted a reason to come here. The directness of it stopped her. I had a reason. You had an error. Those are often the same thing. For you, for people who run companies. Ethan picked up a coil of wire. I would not know. Madison followed him along the creek. The bank was soft from recent rain. Water moved quietly over stones, carrying leaves toward the lower edge of the orchard. 3 fence posts leaned at slightly different angles. Ethan pressed his boot into the soil near the first one. The creek has shifted again. Since last week, since last year. You make it sound alive. It is. It is water. So are you. Madison looked at him. He continued working as if he had said nothing unusual. She crouched near the post. The ground gave beneath her heel. Ethan reached for her arm, then stopped before touching her. She steadied herself. I am fine. I did not say you were not. You thought it. I thought you were standing on loose soil. That sounds like a metaphor. It sounds like mud. Madison looked across the orchard. The trees stood in long rows, their branches thin against the pale sky. Several still held late fruit-red apples darkened by rain. Do you ever answer a question directly when it is the question being asked? She turned toward him. What do you think is moving underneath my company? Ethan's hand stopped on the wire. He looked at her for a long moment. I think someone is making decisions faster than the records can support them. Grant. I do not know, Grant. You saw his name in the sale documents. I saw his approval. That is not the same thing. No. The corner of his mouth shifted slightly. Madison recognized the expression now. You are smiling again. I am not. Lucy was right about you. Lucy is right too often. It is becoming a problem. A voice came from the higher rows. I heard that. Lucy appeared between the trees carrying a canvas bag filled with apples. She wore a knit cap pulled low over her ears. You were supposed to be doing math, Ethan said. I am. You are carrying apples. There are 12 in the bag. I counted them. That is not math. It is more math than I wanted. She set the bag near Madison's feet. We are sorting them. For what? Pie. Madison looked toward the farmhouse. Your father bakes. Lucy's face remained serious. He tries. Ethan picked up the coil of wire. The last one was edible. The middle was. That is the part people eat. Lucy took Madison's hand before Madison could object. Come on. The packing shed smelled of wood, cold earth, and fruit. Sunlight entered through narrow gaps in the boards. Old wooden crates were stacked along one wall. A long table ran beneath the windows. Lucy emptied the apples onto the surface. Some were bright and smooth. Others had bruises, scars, or spots where birds had broken the skin. Lucy placed 2 baskets on the table. Good ones here, bad ones there. Madison picked up an apple with the dark mark on one side and placed it in the second basket. Lucy moved it back. That one is good. It is bruised. It is for pie. Madison selected another. A small split ran near the stem. Bad. Lucy examined it. Good. This system lacks standards. It has standards. You keep changing them. No, you keep using the wrong ones. Ethan leaned against the doorway, watching. Madison arranged 3 apples by size. Lucy moved them apart. They do not have to match. They cook evenly if they are the same size. We cut them. Madison looked at the child. Lucy looked back with the patience of someone explaining something obvious. These are not going into a store, she said. Nobody cares how they look. Madison held up the bruised apple. People always care how things look. My dad does not. Ethan lowered his gaze. Lucy added, unless it is the fence. He cares too much about the fence. Madison turned the apple in her hand. The skin was damaged, but the fruit beneath it felt firm. Lucy took it from her and placed it in the good basket. This one is still useful. Madison looked toward Ethan. He was no longer smiling. For a moment, she wondered whether Lucy understood how often her simple observations reached places adults spent years avoiding. Her phone vibrated. A message from her assistant filled the screen. Grant had scheduled an emergency strategy session for Monday morning. North Star Care Partners had submitted a formal acquisition proposal. Madison read the message twice. Ethan noticed the change in her expression. Something happened. It is work. That is not what I said. She placed the phone face down on the table. Someone wants to buy the company. Lucy continued sorting apples. Ethan remained at the door. Do you want to sell? It is not only my decision, that is also not what I asked. Madison looked at him. No. The word came more quickly than she expected. Ethan nodded once. He did not ask how much the offer was worth. He did not tell her what to do. He simply lifted the good basket and carried it toward the farmhouse. Madison watched him leave. By Monday morning, the acquisition had become the only subject anyone in the Seattle headquarters wanted to discuss. North Star Care Partners operated more than 100 clinics across 5 states. Its executives described the company as an integrated healthcare platform. Grant described it as the future. The board gathered in the main conference room at 8. A model of the proposed transaction appeared on the screen, $610 million. North Star would acquire a controlling interest in Hale Community Health. Existing investors would receive cash and equity. Madison would remain CEO for 3 years, subject to performance targets established after closing. Grant stood near the screen. This gives us access to technology, purchasing power, and capital we cannot create alone. Madison turned a page in the presentation. Who prepared the clinic analysis? Our integration team. Which integration team? Grant named 3 executives. None of them worked for Hale Community Health. Madison looked at the next slide. It showed projected expansion into Oregon, Idaho, and Montana. The numbers were strong. Too strong. What assumptions are being used for rural operating costs? Grant did not look at the appendix. The same methodology used across the network. That does not answer the question. One director shifted in his chair. Grant kept his tone even. The detailed model can be reviewed during diligence. We are being asked to approve diligence based on these projections. We are being asked to explore a transaction with a control provision. Grant smiled. That is how acquisitions work. Madison turned to the final pages. A table listed facilities subject to consolidation review. 7 rural clinics appeared in small type. One was in a mountain town where Walter had opened a clinic after a logging mill closed. Another served migrant farm workers during the apple harvest. What does consolidation review mean? Grant glanced towards the screen. It means North Star will evaluate overlapping services. There are no overlapping services in those towns. There may be inefficient services. Healthcare is often inefficient where people are poor. The room became quieter. Grant placed one hand on the back of a chair. We cannot preserve every location because of history. It is not history to the people using it. We have a duty to consider value. We have more than one kind of value. Grant looked toward the other directors. This is exactly why we need scale. Sentiment cannot be our operating model. Madison closed the presentation. No one said it should be. Then what are you saying? I am saying the proposal describes growth without clearly describing who pays for it. Grant's expression did not change, but his fingers tightened against the chair. Madison continued, I will not recommend the transaction until I review the founder trust and every amendment attached to it. A director near the end of the table frowned. The trust is not relevant. The control provision expired. Then reviewing it should not concern anyone. Grant looked at her. We have already received counsel's opinion. I want the documents. The meeting ended without a vote. Grant remained in the conference room as the directors left. Madison gathered her papers. You are reacting emotionally, he said. She did not look up. People usually say that when a woman notices something inconvenient. You are protecting your father. I am reviewing a contract. You refused an extraordinary opportunity because 7 clinics appeared in an appendix. I refused nothing. You slowed it. Yes. Grant stepped closer. North Star will not wait forever. Madison met his eyes. Then they should learn patience before they own clinics. She walked out. Naomi Chen met her in the underground parking garage that evening. Naomi had served as general counsel for 11 years. She spoke carefully, wrote everything down, and never entered a room without knowing who had arrived before her. She stood beside Madison's car with her coat buttoned to the throat. You requested the founder trust. Yes. Read Section 12. I have read it. Read the 2018 amendment. Madison unlocked the car. There was no material amendment in 2018. Naomi did not move. Who told you that? The board archive. That is not a person. Madison looked at her. Cars moved slowly behind them, headlights sliding across the concrete pillars. What are you saying? Naomi glanced toward the security camera above the elevator. I am saying you should request the original filing from the state registry. Why? Because the copy in the board archive may not be complete. Madison studied her face. How long have you known? Naomi's expression remained controlled. Long enough to know that questions asked in the wrong room become warnings. She turned toward the elevators. Naomi. She stopped. Why are you telling me now? Because now you are finally asking a question that matters. The elevator doors opened. Naomi entered and was gone. Madison drove east again that Friday. She did not tell Walter she was coming. She did not call Ethan. She arrived in Cle Elum after dark and found the lights on inside the town diner. Ethan was sitting alone at a corner table. A notebook lay open beside his coffee. He saw her through the window before she entered. He closed the notebook. Madison slid into the seat across from him. You are difficult to find. I live in the same place every day. That is not what I meant. I know. A waitress approached. Ethan said black coffee. Madison looked at him. You ordered for me. You are predictable. That is rude. You drink it the same way every time. We have shared coffee once. You held the cup like someone had already disappointed you. The waitress poured. Madison waited until she walked away. What were you writing? Orchard expenses. You closed it quickly. Lucy drew something in the margin. What a picture of me falling off the shed roof. Did you? No. Then why did she draw it? She is optimistic. Madison laughed, then covered the cup with both hands. The warmth felt good after the cold outside. For several minutes they spoke about ordinary things. Lucy had convinced Walter to purchase 2 goats. Walter had purchased 4. The goats had already escaped once and eaten part of Ethan's blackberry hedge. Madison told him Walter had never successfully cared for a houseplant. That explains the goats, Ethan said. It does not. He wanted something harder. That is exactly how my father makes decisions. Ethan looked at her. So do you. Madison's smile faded. You know very little about how I make decisions. You drove 2 hours to correct a reference number that was not wrong. She looked down at her coffee. Outside, a delivery truck passed slowly along the wet street. Ethan waited. He was good at silence. Not the aggressive silence executives use to make someone fill a room with nervous words. His silence offered space without demanding anything from it. Madison finally spoke. North Star Care Partners wants to buy the company. How much? $610 million. Ethan did not react. That is usually the part people react to. Is it a good price? It is a strong price. That was not my question. Madison stared into the coffee. I do not know. What are they buying? 22 clinics, our contracts, our technology, our name. That is what the agreement lists. What else would they be buying? Ethan leaned back. Trust. History. The reason patients drive past other clinics to use yours. Madison said nothing. What do they want? He asked. Regional control. And what do they say they want? Efficiency. Expansion. Better technology. Do you believe them? Some of it. Which part? The technology. He almost smiled. She looked toward the window. My father built the first clinic with $18,000 and a second mortgage. He treated patients after closing because some of them could not miss work. My mother handled the books at the kitchen table. I used to sleep beneath the reception desk. Ethan listened. Madison continued. The company is larger now. It cannot be managed like a family business. No. The agreement surprised her. But it can still remember why it exists, he said. Madison swallowed. Grant says I am protecting history. Are you? I am protecting what my father built. That is not the same thing. Her eyes sharpened. You keep saying that. Because you keep making them the same. Madison placed the cup down. You do not know enough about me to say that. No. Ethan's voice stayed calm. But you did not drive here because you wanted advice from someone who knows you. Then why did I come? Because you wanted to say the truth somewhere it could not be used against you. The words struck harder than she expected. Madison looked away. A dog crossed the street outside and disappeared between two parked trucks. Ethan reached for the coffee pot and refilled her cup. He did not apologize. He did not explain himself. He simply waited. Madison spoke for nearly 20 minutes. She told him about the closure list. She told him about the missing amendment. She told him Naomi had warned her in a parking garage. She told him Grant had already begun speaking as though the sale were inevitable. When she finished, Ethan looked at the dark surface of his coffee. Request the state filing. I already did. And it will arrive Monday. Do not tell Grant. Madison studied him. That sounded like advice. It was. Why? Because people who hide documents do not become more honest when they learn you are looking. The diner door opened. Cold air moved through the room. Madison thought about Naomi's warning. Questions asked in the wrong room become warnings. What did you do before the orchard? She asked. Ethan looked toward Main Street. Something I was good at. That is still not an answer. It is more than I usually give. The following week, Grant received the first report on Ethan Mercer. It contained his birth records, property ownership, vehicle registration, and the orchard business license. Then came a gap. Before the gap, Ethan had worked at Rainier Equity Group. His exact responsibilities were unclear. Several internal documents named him as a senior risk analyst. One listed him as vice president. Another placed him on a restructuring team tied to a collapsed medical supply merger. After that, almost nothing. No professional profile. No conference appearances, no board positions, no public statements. No trace of the career a man like Ethan should have left behind. Grant called the investigator. This is incomplete. It is what is public. Then look where it is not public. That will cost more. Grant looked through the glass wall of his office. Madison was speaking with Naomi near the elevators. Charge it to strategic diligence. That Saturday, Madison found Lucy at the Cle Elum Farmers Market. Lucy stood beside a table of pears, examining each one before placing it back. You reject fruit very seriously, Madison said. Lucy looked up. These are not ready. How can you tell the stem? Madison picked up a pear. It looks fine. The outside tells you what happened to it. The stem tells you if it is ready. And what does your father say about people? Lucy considered the question. He says people tell you when they are ready. Grown-ups just do not listen. Across the market, Ethan stood near a crate of squash. He saw Madison and Lucy together. Lucy handed Madison a pear. Madison accepted it. Something inside Ethan tightened. His daughter did not trust quickly. When she did, she trusted with her whole heart. That evening, after Lucy went to bed, Ethan sat alone at the kitchen table. Rain tapped softly against the windows. He opened the sealed box he had avoided for 6 years. Inside were his old credentials, risk reports, and a notebook filled with Rachel's handwriting. He found a number on the first page. Daniel Brooks answered after 4 rings. For several seconds, neither man spoke. Then Daniel said, "I wondered how long it would take." Ethan looked toward the hallway. "I need access to an appellate archive. You have not called me in 6 years." "I know." "Is this about Rainier?" No, Daniel waited. Ethan opened Madison's company filing on the table. "It is about a founder, trust a missing amendment, and a man who thinks no one will read closely enough to stop him." Daniel was quiet. "Who is she?" Ethan looked at the pair Lucy had left beside the sink. "A woman who is standing on loose ground, and you are going to help her." Ethan turned to the window where the orchard disappeared into the rain. "Yes," Ethan said. "Before the fence falls." Daniel Brooks did not answer immediately. The silence carried 6 years of unanswered calls, unopened messages, and the kind of disappointment that had long ago hardened into restraint. Finally, Daniel asked what company. Hale Community Health. The clinic group, yes, and the man, Grant Holloway. Ethan heard a keyboard begin clicking. Daniel had always worked while other people were still deciding whether they were willing to help. It was one of the reasons Ethan had trusted him at Rainier. "What am I looking for?" Daniel asked. "A founder trust filed in Washington. Original charter dates back more than 20 years. There may be an amendment from 2018 that does not appear in the company archive. Maybe the General Counsel told Madison to request the state copy." Madison. Ethan did not respond. Daniel gave a quiet breath that might have been a laugh. "So the woman standing on loose ground has a name. She is the CEO. That does not answer what I said." Ethan looked toward the dark hallway. Lucy had left her bedroom door open. A narrow line of light crossed the floor. "She is Walter Hale's daughter. Walter Hale founded the company." "Yes. And you happen to live next door to him?" "Yes." Daniel stopped typing. "Nothing in your life ever happens simply. I moved to an orchard. You moved to an orchard with a sealed box of securities records under your kitchen table." Ethan looked at the open box. Rachel's notebook rested on top of the old reports. Her handwriting moved across the first page in blue ink, fast and slightly uneven, as though her thoughts had always traveled faster than her hand. He closed the cover. "Can you find the filing? I can find almost anything that was properly recorded. And if it was not, then someone worked very hard to make sure it stayed hidden." The keyboard started again. "I will call you in the morning." Ethan ended the call and remained at the table. Rain moved softly over the roof. 6 years earlier, he would have opened 3 databases, built a timeline, and worked until sunrise. He would have told himself that urgency was discipline. He would have ignored the hour, the empty rooms, and the person waiting for him to come home. He no longer trusted that version of himself. He stood, carried the box into the pantry, and placed it on the highest shelf. Then he walked upstairs. Lucy was asleep with an agricultural engineering book open beside her. Rachel's red scarf lay across the pillow. Ethan removed the book and turned off the lamp. Before he left, Lucy spoke without opening her eyes. "Was that the man from Seattle?" Ethan stopped. "What man? The one who calls on Sundays. He stopped calling." "You called him." "Yes." "Is Madison in trouble?" Ethan looked at his daughter. Children noticed movement beneath the ground long before adults admitted the fence was leaning. "She might be." Lucy opened her eyes. "Are you going to help her?" "I am trying." "Good." She rolled onto her side. She gave me the pear back. "What pear?" "The one from the market. She said it should stay at our house because I picked it." Ethan waited. Lucy closed her eyes again. "That means she plans to come back." He pulled the blanket over her shoulder. "That is a lot to decide from a pear." "No," Lucy murmured. "It is not." Daniel called at 6:13 the next morning. Ethan was already in the orchard checking frost along the lower rows. The air had turned sharp during the night. Thin ice covered the water trough, and the eastern sky had begun to lighten behind the mountains. "I found the amendment," Daniel said. Ethan stopped beside tree 42. "What does it say?" "It extends the founder protection for 20 years from the date of filing. Any transfer of controlling interest requires approval by 2/3 of the independent directors, the founder or designated successor, and a community impact review. North Star does not have those approvals, not even close. Then why does Holloway believe the provision expired?" "He may not believe it." Daniel sent a document to Ethan's phone. A legal memorandum filled the screen. Grant's outside counsel had argued that the founder protection became dormant because it had not been referenced in board minutes for more than 20 years. They cite 3 Washington cases, Daniel said. The strongest one was reversed, when 2021. Why would counsel use it? The reversal is under a consolidated docket. A normal keyword search brings up the trial decision first. You have to follow the appeal through a related corporate trust case. Ethan enlarged the citation. You found it quickly. I knew where to look. So did they. Daniel was quiet. Yes. The cold moved through Ethan's gloves. He looked across the orchard toward Walter's property. Smoke rose from the chimney. Beyond it, the mountain stood pale beneath the morning sky. When did Holloway join the board, he asked. Late 2018. Before or after the amendment 4 months after. He knew, most likely. Ethan ended the call and returned to the farmhouse. Lucy sat at the kitchen table eating cereal. She watched him spread the documents beside the fruit bowl. You look like you used to, she said. Ethan looked up. When Mom was alive. The words were not accusing. That made them harder to hear. How did I look like you were in a room nobody else could enter? Ethan pulled out the chair across from her. I am sorry. Lucy moved a piece of cereal through the milk. You are here now. Yes. Then stay here. He looked at the documents. The old reflex told him to keep reading, find every weakness, prepare for every possible response. Instead, he closed the laptop. Your bus comes in 20 minutes. I know. You are not dressed. I am wearing clothes. You are wearing pajamas. That is still clothes. Ethan stood. Upstairs. Lucy carried the bowl to the sink. At the doorway, she turned back. Are you helping Madison today? Yes. Are you going to tell her who you were? Ethan looked toward the window. Not today. Lucy studied him, then went upstairs. After the school bus left, Ethan sat at the kitchen table with a yellow legal pad. He wrote the analysis by hand. Section 12, the 2018 amendment, the control requirements, the community review, the reversed Washington case. He addressed every paragraph of Grant's memo in order. He included the full appellate docket number and the page where the court rejected the exact interpretation Grant's counsel had used. He did not write his name. At the top of the first page, he added one sentence. Ask Grant Holloway why the 2018 amendment is missing from the board archive. Before sunrise the following day, Ethan drove to Seattle. Traffic thickened as he approached the city. Glass towers rose beneath a low ceiling of clouds. Buses moved through wet intersections. People crossed streets carrying coffee and looking at phones. He had once belonged to that motion. He had measured his life in elevators, conference calls, and the minutes between one obligation and the next. Now the noise felt like something he had survived. Hale Community Health occupied 4 floors of a tower near the waterfront. Ethan entered through the main lobby wearing a dark coat over his work shirt. Mud remained along the edges of his boots. The receptionist looked at the envelope. Who should I say delivered it? No one. I need a name for the log. Ethan considered the question. Put Orchard. She looked at him. Orchard, yes. He left before she could ask anything else. Madison arrived at 8:20. The envelope was waiting in the center of her desk. No return address, no name. Only one word written by the receptionist in the delivery log. Orchard. Madison closed her office door. She read Ethan's analysis once from beginning to end. Then she read it again with the Founder Trust open on her screen. Every reference matched. The appellate reversal existed. The 2018 amendment was valid. The control protection had not expired. Madison called the state registry and requested a certified copy. When it arrived electronically, the signature page carried Walter Hale's name and the date of filing, 4 months before Grant joined the board. Madison searched the corporate archive. The amendment was missing. The annual filing from the same year was there. The board minutes were there. The trust summary was there. Only the page extending the founder protection had disappeared. She called Naomi. Come to my office. Naomi entered 3 minutes later and closed the door behind her. Madison placed Ethan's analysis on the desk. Did you send this? No. Do you know who did Naomi read the first page? Her eyes paused at the appellate citation. No, she said. But I know who did not want you to see the amendment. Madison turned the certified copy toward her. Grant joined after it was filed. Yes, he knew it existed. Yes, why is it missing from the archive? Naomi sat down. For the first time since Madison had known her, she looked tired. Because the archive is not a vault. It is a system controlled by people. How long have you known I knew the copy was missing when I reviewed the transition records before you became CEO, and you said nothing? I raised the issue with the board chair. What happened? He told me the amendment was legally dormant and had no bearing on current governance. Grant's language. Yes. Madison stood and walked toward the window. You let me run this company for 2 years without knowing a control protection existed. I documented the conversation. That is not the same as warning me. No. Naomi's answer was quiet. Madison turned. Then explain it. Naomi folded her hands. Grant had the support of 4 directors. Your appointment was not as secure as you believed. If I had accused him without proof, he would have removed me, replaced the archive team, and destroyed whatever remained. So you waited. I watched. For 2 years. For 11. Madison stared at her. Naomi continued. Grant began consolidating authority long before you became CEO. He moved financial approvals into discretionary accounts. He replaced outside consultants with firms tied to his network. Every action was defensible by itself. And together they formed a pattern. Where is the documentation? Naomi looked at the locked case she had carried into the room. Not in the company archive. She opened it. Inside were original minutes from a confidential leadership meeting held 8 months before Madison became CEO. The 5th paragraph contained Grant's recommendation that the incoming chief executive not be briefed on the founder trust because personal loyalty might complicate the transition. 4 directors had signed beneath it. Madison read the paragraph twice. They thought I could not be trusted with my own company. Naomi watched her carefully. They thought you could be managed. Madison picked up Ethan's analysis, and a man from an orchard found the part all of you missed. Naomi shook her head. We did not miss it. The distinction settled heavily between them. At 4 that afternoon, Madison entered Grant's office without knocking. He sat behind his desk with 2 North Star executives on a video call. Madison placed the legal memorandum in front of him. End the meeting. Grant glanced at the document. I will call you back, he told the screen. When the call ended, he leaned back. You found the amendment. You knew it existed. The board was advised that the provision had expired. The case your counsel cited was reversed in 2021. Grant's eyes moved briefly toward the citation. It was less than a second. Madison saw it. You knew that too. Grant stood. You are making a serious accusation. I am reading your lawyer's work more carefully than you expected. Our interpretation remains defensible. Then why was the amendment removed from the archive? I did not manage the archive. You recommended that I not be briefed on it. Grant's expression changed. Not surprise. Calculation. Madison understood that Naomi's documents had not been the only copies. Grant knew exactly what she had found. Who gave you this? He asked. It does not matter. It matters if the chief executive is accepting unofficial legal advice from an undisclosed party. The law does not become unofficial because you dislike who found it. Grant opened a drawer and removed a large envelope. He spread photographs across the desk. Madison at Ethan's orchard. Madison walking beside the creek. Madison sitting across from Ethan in the diner. Madison and Lucy at the farmer's market. For a moment she heard nothing but the building's ventilation system. You had me followed. I investigated an external influence on the chief executive. You used company money. I used strategic diligence funds to photograph me with the child to understand why you delayed a transaction worth $610 million. Madison picked up the photograph from the market. Lucy was holding out a pear. Madison's face was turned toward her, softened by a smile she had not known anyone was watching. Grant tapped Ethan's image. That man worked at Rainier Equity Group. Madison said nothing. He was involved in a medical supply restructuring that collapsed. Investors lost millions. He disappeared before the civil case settled. You investigated his career. He removed it. Why Grant watched her, you do not know. The words found the one place she had not protected. Madison placed the photograph down. Grant continued. You have driven across the mountains repeatedly to see a man whose history you have never examined. Now he is feeding you legal arguments designed to interfere with a transaction. He found an amendment you concealed, or he found exactly what he needed to make you trust him." Madison's jaw tightened. Grant stepped closer to the desk. "If you bring this to the board, I will ask whether your judgment has been compromised by a personal relationship. You paid someone to watch me. I protected the company. You protected your deal. If North Star walks, every director will know you killed a $610 million transaction because you became emotionally attached to a farmer." Madison gathered the photographs. Grant looked at the one in her hand. "You should leave those." "No, they belong to the company." "No," Madison said, "they belong to the people you violated." She walked toward the door. Grant called after her. "Rainier sealed part of his record for a reason." Madison stopped but did not turn. "Then I will ask him." She drove to Cleveland in heavy rain. The trip took nearly 3 hours. Water struck the windshield faster than the wipers could clear it. Darkness covered the mountains before she reached the county road. Ethan's house was lit, but he was not inside. She found him in the packing shed beneath a single hanging lamp repairing the belt on an old sorting machine. He looked up as she entered. Her coat was wet. Her hair had come loose from its pins. She carried the photographs in one hand. Ethan saw the top image and became still. "How much did he find?" he asked. Madison threw the photographs onto the workbench. "Enough to know you lied to me. I never lied. You let me believe you were a farmer who happened to understand title records. I am a farmer. You worked at Rainier Equity Group." Ethan looked at the machine. "Yes. In what position? Vice President of Risk." Madison gave a short, disbelieving breath. "You reviewed acquisitions, yes. You advised on corporate restructuring, yes. You understood Grant's shell companies because you built structures like them. I analyzed them. You knew how to read the founder trust, yes. Why did you not tell me?" Ethan wiped his hands on a cloth. "Because you did not ask who I used to be. I asked you more than once. You asked what I did. That is the same question." "No." Madison stared at him. Rain struck the roof with increasing force. "What happened at Rainier?" Ethan walked to the shed door and closed it. For several seconds he stood with his hand on the latch. Then he began. Rainier Equity had considered acquiring a medical supply company that appeared profitable on paper. Its revenue depended on distribution contracts that had not been finalized. Ethan found inconsistencies in the projections. He raised questions. Senior executives gave him explanations. The answers were incomplete, but accepting them kept the deal moving and protected a promotion he had spent years chasing. Rachel represented one of the smaller investors. She discovered internal emails showing that Rainier executives knew the projections were false. She reported them through her firm. The firm removed her from the case. The acquisition closed. The structure failed less than 2 years later. Employees lost retirement accounts. Smaller investors lost everything. Executives settled without admitting wrongdoing. Madison looked at him. And Rachel, she kept pushing. What happened to her? Ethan's voice changed. She was driving home from a deposition when another vehicle crossed the center line. Madison became still. It was an accident. Yes. Was it connected to the case? No. He answered quickly as though he had been forced to answer it many times. The other driver fell asleep. There was no conspiracy, no threat, no one followed her. But you connect them. Ethan looked toward the wall. She spent her last year trying to make people see something they wanted to ignore. I spent that year convincing myself I needed more proof. You did not cause the accident. No. Do you believe that he looked at her, some days? The anger inside Madison loosened. Not because the deception mattered less, but because she could finally see the shape of what he had been protecting. Ethan continued. After the settlement, Rainier offered me a position in another division. More money, less oversight. You refused. I signed the separation agreement, took Lucy, and left Seattle. You erased your career. I stopped feeding it. Madison looked at the photographs scattered across the workbench. You could have told me, and then what I would have understood why you knew these things. You would have researched me before you decided whether anything I said was true. That is my job. That is your armor. Madison's eyes sharpened. You do not get to decide how I protect myself. No. Ethan stepped closer. But you asked who I was. His voice lowered. I was a man who saw the edges of something wrong and waited for certainty. By the time I acted, other people had already paid for my caution. Madison remembered his words at the gate. I need someone who stays. She looked at him. That was about Rachel. It was about me. How she stayed while I worked late, missed dinners, and promised everything would become easier after the next deal. His hands tightened around the cloth. She stayed while I became someone neither of us liked. Then she died, and Lucy was left with a father who had spent years treating later like a place we were guaranteed to reach. Madison's voice softened. So when Walter said you needed a wife, he thought I was lonely. Are you? Ethan met her eyes. Yes. The honesty took the air from the room. But loneliness does not give me the right to ask someone to carry a life she did not choose. Madison took one step closer. What if she chooses it? Ethan did not move. Then she needs to know what she is choosing. The shed door opened behind them. Lucy stood in the rain wearing her coat over her pajamas. She looked at Madison's wet face, then at the photographs. Is someone trying to hurt her? Ethan answered without looking away from Madison. Yes. Lucy stepped inside and closed the door. Are you going to let them? Madison looked at Ethan. The man in front of her was no longer a farmer with an unexplained talent for reading documents. He was a father who had built a quiet life around one promise never again to see danger clearly and remain silent. Madison gathered the photographs from the workbench. No, she said. Her voice was steady now. No, Madison said. I am not. The words settled inside the packing shed with the sound of rain against the roof. Lucy watched her for another second, then crossed the room and picked up the photograph of herself at the farmer's market. She studied the image as if it belonged to someone else. Why was he taking pictures of us? He was trying to understand why I kept coming here, Madison said. Lucy looked at Ethan. Did he ask? No. That would have been easier. Ethan took the photograph from her and placed it face down on the workbench. Go back to the house. Are you coming in a minute? Lucy glanced between them. She wanted to argue, but something in Ethan's face stopped her. She pulled her coat tighter and stepped into the rain. Madison listened until the farmhouse door closed. Then she turned to Ethan. I need the original sources for your analysis. I can send them. I need Daniel's full name and a way for Naomi to verify the appellate record. Ethan nodded. You should also pull every payment Grant made through strategic diligence. Naomi has been tracking his discretionary accounts. That does not mean she has everything. Madison looked at the photographs again. He spent company money to investigate you. He spent company money to investigate your judgment. That distinction does not improve it. No. Ethan stood across from her calm again now that the problem had become practical. Madison recognized the shift. It was the same one she made before difficult meetings. Feel less, organize more. You do not have to come to Seattle, she said. I know. The board may want to hear from you. They do not need me. You found the reversal. I showed you where to look. You understand Grant's structure. So do you now. Madison held his gaze. You really will not come. This is your company. That sounds convenient. It is not meant to. You stepped into this far enough to expose him, then decided the rest belongs to me. Yes. She gave a disbelieving laugh. You make leaving looks like principle. Ethan's expression tightened. I am not leaving. You stand at the edge of every room and call it staying. The words struck him. Madison saw it, but she did not take them back. She gathered the photographs and placed them inside the envelope. I will send Naomi the contact information, Ethan said. Madison turned toward the door. Madison. She stopped. I did not help you because I thought you were incapable. She looked over her shoulder. Then why Ethan's voice softened. Because I knew what it was like to see the truth and still need someone to tell you that you were not imagining it. For one moment, the anger inside her made room for something else. Then she opened the door and walked into the rain. By 7 the next morning, the lights were on across the executive floor of Hale Community Health. Madison stood in the main conference room with Naomi and 2 independent directors. Certified filings covered the table. The company's founder trust lay open beside Grant's legal memorandum. On the screen, a timeline began with Walter's original charter and ended with the North Star proposal. Naomi placed another folder beside Madison. Payments from the strategic diligence account? How far back? 6 years. Madison opened the folder. Consulting fees, research retainers, travel reimbursements, legal reviews routed through small firms with no visible relationship to Hale Community Health. Several payments had been approved by Grant alone. One director, Frances Caldwell, adjusted her glasses. Were these reported to the audit committee? No, Naomi said. Frances had served on the board since Walter's 6th year. She was 73, silver-haired, and patient in the way people became patient after spending decades watching others mistake speed for intelligence. What about the investigator, she asked. Naomi turned a page. Paid through a Colorado research firm. The invoice describes the work as competitive landscape analysis. Frances looked at Madison. Do you have the photographs? Madison placed the envelope on the table. The second director, Michael Reeves, examined the images without touching them. This is serious, he said. Madison looked at him. Which part? The surveillance. Not the concealed amendment, both. Not the rural closure plan, I said both. You said surveillance first. Michael leaned back. We need to remain objective. Madison closed the folder. Objectivity does not mean pretending every offense carries the same weight. Naomi watched them without speaking. Frances turned toward the screen. What does North Star know? We cannot prove they knew the founder protection was valid, Naomi said. We can prove their integration team prepared closure projections before the board approved formal diligence. How many clinics? 7 in the initial model. Possibly 9 after the first year. Michael frowned. The proposal described service consolidation. The model describes permanent closure, Madison said. Did Grant disclose that to the board? Frances removed her glasses. Then we are not dealing with an aggressive transaction. We are dealing with a deliberately incomplete one. The room became quiet. Madison walked toward the window. Seattle was still dark. Rain moved across the glass in thin diagonal lines. Far below, delivery trucks gathered near the loading entrances. Her phone buzzed. Walter. She declined the call. He called again. Madison answered. I am working. So am I. You are retired. That has never stopped me. She turned away from the others. What do you need to know whether you slept? That is not relevant. Then you did not. Madison closed her eyes. Walter's voice changed. Do you have enough? Yes. Are you sure? No. Good. She opened her eyes. Why is that good? Certain people stop checking. Madison looked at the documents across the table. Did you know Grant removed the amendment? I knew the archive copy was missing. You knew. I knew Naomi had concerns, and you said nothing to me. You were appointed by a board that could remove you, so you protected my position by letting me remain uninformed. No. I trusted Naomi to choose the moment when the truth could survive being spoken. Madison's jaw tightened. You both decided what I could handle. Yes. The honesty angered her more than an excuse would have. Walter continued. You can be angry with me after the vote. I am already angry. That is probably useful. She heard a cup set down on his sides of the call. Then he said, Do not defend what I built because it was mine. Madison looked at the framed charter on the far wall. Then why defend it? Because of what it still does. The line went quiet. Walter waited. Madison finally said, I know. No, he answered gently. You are starting to. He ended the call. At 9:30, Grant sent notice of an emergency motion. He intended to ask the board to suspend Madison's authority over the North Star transaction. Naomi read the notice twice. He is moving first. Frances looked toward Madison. He thinks you are not ready. Madison gathered the documents. He is right. Michael stared at her. What? I am not ready. She picked up the envelope of photographs. But neither is he. The board meeting began at 11. Every seat was filled. Grant sat near the center of the table with outside counsel beside him. 4 directors who had signed the concealed transition minutes sat together on the opposite side. Madison took her usual chair at the head. The empty seat to her right belonged to Walter. He had not attended a board meeting since his retirement. Today the chair seemed more visible than anyone in the room. Grant opened before Madison could speak. I have submitted a motion concerning an urgent governance matter. Madison folded her hands. Proceed. His presentation began with photographs. The first showed Madison entering Ethan's orchard. The second showed her at the diner. The third showed her beside Lucy at the market. Grant's voice remained controlled. Over the past several weeks, the chief executive has developed an undisclosed personal relationship with a party opposing the sale of company property. Madison did not move. Grant continued. That party has provided unofficial legal analysis regarding the North Star transaction. Based on that analysis, the chief executive delayed board consideration of an offer valued at $610 million. One director looked toward Madison. Grant advanced the slide. Ethan's former Rainier position appeared on the screen. Mr. Mercer was previously involved in a failed medical supply restructuring that resulted in significant investor losses and civil litigation. Madison heard Ethan's voice in the packing shed. I saw the edges of something wrong and waited for certainty. Grant faced the board. I am requesting that Madison Hale be temporarily removed from all decisions concerning North Star until an independent review determines whether her judgment has been compromised. Silence followed. Michael cleared his throat. Madison, are you romantically involved with Mr. Mercer? Several directors looked down. Madison looked directly at Michael. My private life is not before this board. Grant leaned forward. Your judgment is. Yes, Madison said. It is. She rose. Naomi dimmed the photograph and replaced it with the North Star closure model. 7 clinic names filled the screen. These facilities were marked for permanent closure in North Star's integration forecast. Grant shook his head. They were marked for review. Madison held up the underlying document. The word closure appears 18 times. Every acquisition includes scenario planning. Then why was this scenario excluded from the board presentation? Grant turned to the directors. Because it was preliminary. The revenue projections were also preliminary. You included those. No one spoke. Madison advanced to the Founder Trust. This is the certified 2018 amendment extending the change of control protection for 20 years. Grant's attorney shifted in his seat. Madison continued. The amendment requires independent board approval, founder or successor approval, and a community impact review before any controlling sale. Grant said our counsel determined that the provision was legally dormant. Your counsel relied on a Washington decision reversed on appeal in 2021. The appellate ruling appeared beside the legal memo. Madison read the relevant sentence. Grant interrupted. The appellate case involved different facts. You cited the original decision as controlling authority. Our legal interpretation is defensible. Then defend the missing amendment. Grant became still. Madison turned to Naomi. Naomi distributed copies of the confidential transition minutes. Paper moved around the table. One of the 4 directors who had signed the document stared at his name. I do not remember this meeting. Naomi placed the original in front of him. You signed in blue ink because the pen at your seat was empty. The director looked at the signature. His face lost color. A woman beside him closed the document. I want counsel. You may call counsel, Madison said. The meeting will remain in session. Grant placed both hands on the table. This is a distraction from the issue before us. No, Madison said. This is the issue. She looked around the room. Before I became CEO, Grant recommended that I not be told about the Founder Trust because my loyalty to the company's mission might interfere with necessary growth. Her voice remained steady. 4 directors agreed. One of them spoke. We were trying to ensure a smooth transition. You withheld a legal protection from the person responsible for honoring it. We believed it had expired. Then why hide it? The director had no answer. Madison advanced the screen again. Payments from the discretionary account appeared beside the investigator's invoice. This board was not informed that company funds were used to follow the chief executive photograph, a 10-year-old child, and investigate a private citizen who challenged Grant's interpretation. Grant's restraint broke. You were taking advice from him. I was reading documents. You were emotionally involved. Madison stepped away from the screen. Yes, the room changed. Grant had expected denial. Madison looked at each director. I care about my father. I care about the people who work in our clinics. I care about the communities North Star has identified as inefficient. She placed one hand on the closure report. If caring disqualifies me from leading this company, remove me. Grant watched her carefully. But do not call concealment objective. Do not call surveillance governance. Do not call closing clinics growth because the word sounds better in a presentation. Francis leaned forward. Grant spoke before she could. This company cannot survive on sentiment. Madison faced him. It survived because people trusted us to show up where larger companies would not. That model is no longer scalable. Then perhaps scale is not the only measure that matters. We have a duty to create value. We have a duty to know what we are destroying to create it. Grant's voice sharpened. You are protecting your father's memory. Madison looked toward Walter's empty chair. For years, she had measured herself against that absence. She had worked longer because he had. She had refused help because he had built the company without it. She had treated every weakness as a debt she owed to his legacy. Now the chair looked different, not like a standard she had failed to reach, like a place someone had finally chosen to leave. My father is alive, she said. A few directors glanced toward the empty seat, and he did not build Hale Community Health so I could preserve his decisions forever. He built it so people could receive care. She looked back at Grant. This transaction buys the reputation of that mission, then closes the places where honoring it costs the most. Frances raised her hand. I call the motion. Grant's motion to suspend Madison came first. 5 directors voted in favor, 6 voted against. The motion failed by 1 vote. Grant looked toward the 4 directors who had supported him. 1 avoided his eyes. Madison remained standing. I move that Hale Community Health reject the North Star proposal, suspend Grant Holloway as Chief Operating Officer, authorize a forensic audit of all discretionary accounts, and refer the concealment of the Founder Trust to independent counsel, Grant's attorney whispered to him. Grant did not respond. The vote began. The first director voted yes. The second voted no. By the time the count reached the final seat, the room stood at 5-5. Frances Caldwell held the deciding vote. She looked at Walter's empty chair, then at Madison. Yes. The motion passed. For several seconds, no one moved. Grant closed his folder. You believe the farmer saved you? Madison looked at him. No. She gathered the photographs from the table. He reminded me to read what men like you hope women like me are too busy to notice. Security waited outside the room. Grant stood. As he passed Madison, he lowered his voice. When North Star walks and the market punishes you, he will still be pruning trees while you explain the losses. Madison did not turn. Then I will explain them. Grant left. By evening, word had spread through the company. Clinic directors called. Employees sent messages. Someone placed flowers outside Madison's office. Someone else left a handwritten note thanking her for protecting the rural locations. Naomi found sparkling water in the executive kitchen and poured it into 2 glasses. To surviving the vote, she said. Madison took one. This is not over. No, the audit may uncover more. Yes, North Star may threaten legal action. They probably will. Madison looked at the empty chair across from her desk. Naomi followed her gaze. You should go home. I am going somewhere. Naomi did not ask where. Madison drove east after dark. The rain had stopped, leaving the highway wet beneath the headlights. Snow lined the shoulders near the pass. When she reached the orchard, Ethan was splitting wood beside the farmhouse. The axe rose and fell beneath the porch light. Lucy watched from the kitchen window. Madison crossed the yard. The board rejected the deal. Ethan set another log on the block. I heard. How Walter called. Of course he did. Ethan swung the axe. The wood split cleanly. Grant was suspended, Madison said. The audit begins tomorrow. Ethan nodded. I knew you could do it. That is all. He placed the axe against the block. What else should there be, I do not know. Relief, happiness, something. I am relieved. You do not look relieved. Ethan glanced toward the kitchen window. Lucy had moved away. Madison stepped closer. You helped expose a man who tried to take my company. I helped you find a document. You know that is not all you did. Ethan picked up the split wood. The danger is over. The sentence chilled her more than the night air. What does that mean? It means you can return to Seattle. I never left Seattle. You know what I mean. Madison blocked his path. No. Say it. Ethan looked at her. You came here because something in your life was breaking. I came before I knew about North Star. You came because of the land. I came back because of you. His expression tightened. And now you won. So people return to the lives they built. Madison stared at him. You think I will stop coming. I think the city will need you. The company will need you. You will remember that this place was somewhere you came when everything felt uncertain. What if I do not want the life I built? You do not tear apart your life because a quiet place felt good during a crisis. Her voice sharpened. "And you do not get to decide my feelings are temporary because yours frighten you." Ethan looked toward the house again. "This is not only about us, I know. No, Madison, you like Lucy. She likes you." He set the wood down. "That makes this more dangerous. You think I would hurt her. I think adults make promises when they feel certain." His voice lowered. "Children live with what happens when certainty changes." Madison felt the truth inside the fear, but it did not make the fear fair. "You are not protecting Lucy from me." Ethan said nothing. "You are protecting yourself from needing me." His jaw tightened. Madison waited for him to deny it. He did not. The porch light hummed above them. Inside the house, a shadow moved past the curtain. Madison stepped back. "I cannot prove I will never leave." Ethan looked at her. "No one can. Then stop asking me for proof." She turned toward the gate. He did not call her name. The drive back to Seattle felt longer than the journey east. At the farmhouse, Lucy sat at the kitchen table with Rachel's red scarf in her lap. Ethan entered, carrying the wood. She looked toward the dark window. "You made her leave." She chose to leave. Lucy's eyes lifted to his. "You always say that when you do not want something to be your fault." Ethan stopped beside the stove. "She has a life in Seattle, so she has a company, so she has responsibilities." Lucy gripped the scarf. "She came here anyway." Ethan placed the wood beside the fireplace. "You do not understand." "Yes, I do." Her voice trembled. "You think if nobody gets close, nobody can leave. That is not what I think. It is what you do." Ethan sat across from her. Lucy looked down at the scarf. "If Madison stays, Mom does not disappear. I know. Do you?" The question was quiet. It opened something he had kept closed for years. Lucy's eyes filled with tears. "You act like loving someone new means we did not love Mom enough." Ethan could not answer. Lucy stood and walked toward the stairs. At the first step, she stopped. "You tell me dead trees feel different." Ethan looked at her. "But you keep treating everything alive like it is already gone." She went upstairs. Ethan remained at the kitchen table. 3 chairs stood around it. 1 belonged to Lucy. 1 belonged to him. The third had been empty for years. For the first time, he understood that he had not kept it empty for Rachel. He had kept it empty because an empty chair could never make him hope, and hope was the one risk he had never learned how to measure. The chair remained empty through the night. Ethan sat at the kitchen table until the fire collapsed into red ash and the first pale light reached the orchard windows. He did not sleep. He did not open the old box in the pantry, or call Daniel, or search for another problem that could be solved with documents and numbers. He listened to the house. Pipes settling in the walls. Wind moving beneath the porch. Lucy turning once in the room above him. Near sunrise, Ethan carried the empty chair outside. He placed it beside the porch railing and stood looking at it while frost silvered the grass. For years he had believed grief meant protecting what remained. He had protected Lucy from uncertainty. He had protected the orchard from outsiders. He had protected Rachel's memory from being touched by another life. But protection had become another word for distance, and distance had begun teaching his daughter that love was safest when no one was allowed to enter. The front door opened behind him. Lucy stepped onto the porch wearing Rachel's red scarf over her pajamas. Her eyes were swollen from crying. Ethan turned. "I am sorry," he said. Lucy held the scarf against her chest. "For what?" "For making you believe remembering your mother meant we could not love anyone else." She looked at the empty chair. "Are you going to call Madison?" Ethan rested one hand on the porch railing. "I do not know what to say." Lucy considered this. "You could start with the truth." He almost smiled. "That sounds familiar. You say it all the time. I do not always follow my own advice. I noticed." She moved closer and stood beside him. The orchard stretched below them, quiet beneath the morning fog. "Do you want her to come back?" Lucy asked. "Yes." "Then tell her." "What if she does not?" Lucy looked up at him. "Then at least you will know she chose." The answer was simple. That did not make it easy. Ethan took his phone from his pocket. Madison's name waited near the top of his recent calls. He touched it once, then stopped. Lucy watched him. "You are thinking too much. I'm trying not to say the wrong thing. You already said the wrong thing." Ethan looked at her. That is not helpful. It means you can only improve. He called. The phone rang 4 times. Then voicemail answered. Ethan listened to Madison's recorded voice. He almost ended the call. Instead, he waited for the tone. I was wrong, he said. The words sounded too small. He continued. I told myself I was protecting Lucy, but I was protecting the part of me that believes anything good will eventually be taken away. You did not ask me for a guarantee. I asked you to prove something no one can prove. He looked toward the orchard. I do not know what your life should look like. I only know I want a place in it, and I want you to have a place here if that is still what you choose. Ethan paused. Lucy stood very still beside him. I am sorry I made fear sound like wisdom. He ended the call. Lucy looked at the phone. That was good. She may not hear it for hours. She will hear it. How do you know? Because she remembers everything. In Seattle, Madison heard the message at 6:40 in the morning. She was still in yesterday's clothes. Her coat lay across the sofa. The photographs from Grant's investigation were spread across the coffee table, along with the North Star closure report and a copy of the Founder Trust. She had spent the night trying to understand why victory felt so much like loss. When Ethan's name appeared on her screen, she let the call go unanswered, not because she wanted to punish him, because she did not trust herself to speak without asking him to take back every painful word. She listened to the voicemail twice. The first time she heard the apology. The second time, she heard the absence of promises. He had not asked her to move to the orchard. He had not told her everything would work. He had not claimed love could remove grief, distance work, or fear. He had simply offered her a place and admitted that she had the right to choose it. Madison sat beside the photographs. In one, Lucy held out a pear. In another, Ethan watched from several yards away, his face turned toward them with an expression Madison had not understood at the time. It was not suspicion. It was hope arriving before he was ready to defend himself against it. Her phone rang again. This time, Walter's name appeared. Madison answered. It is early. You are awake. That does not make it polite. Ethan called me. She closed her eyes. Of course he did. He asked whether I thought you would answer him. What did you say? I said you would take several hours to analyze a message that contained no hidden meaning. That is insulting. It is also accurate. Madison looked at the Founder Trust. Did you know he would push me away, I suspected, and you still sent me to him? I did not send you there to have an easy life. No. You sent me there with a ridiculous sentence. Walter laughed softly. Madison leaned back against the sofa. You said he needed a wife. I said he needed someone to remind him he was still alive. That is not what you said. You would not have crossed the fence for that. She looked toward the windows. Morning light had begun to reach the Seattle skyline. Did you know about Rainier enough? And you did not tell me. No. Why, because you would have researched the resume before you met the man. Madison said nothing. Walter continued. You would have formed an opinion. You would have decided what his past meant before hearing how it lived inside him. You manipulated both of us. Yes. You keep admitting that too easily. I am old enough to know when denial wastes time. Madison ran one finger along the edge of the photograph. What if he is right about what? That I came to the orchard because my life was breaking. Walter was quiet. Then he said, Your life has been breaking for years. The sentence stung because it was spoken gently. You never stopped long enough to hear it. Madison looked around the apartment. Everything was clean. Nothing was personal. The art had been selected by a designer. The books had been arranged by color. The kitchen held expensive appliances she rarely used. There was no place in the room where another person had changed the shape of anything. I cannot abandon the company, she said. No one asked you to. I cannot become someone who lives in an orchard and makes pie. Walter laughed. Ethan makes terrible pie. That is not the point. No. The point is you still think choosing one life means destroying the other. Madison looked at the city below. What did Mom give up for the company? Walter did not answer immediately. The question had waited between them for years. She gave up many things, he said. Did you ask her to? Not directly. That means yes. It means I allowed her to carry more because she made it look easy. Madison heard regret in his voice. She loved what we built, Walter said. But love does not make sacrifice free. Madison held the phone tighter. Is that why you retired partly? You never told me. You were already working too hard to preserve what I had failed to balance. Walter took a slow breath. Do not repeat my mistake because you believe it honors me. After they ended the call, Madison showered, changed clothes, and drove to the office. The executive floor was quiet. Naomi was already there. She stood beside Madison's desk with 2 cups of coffee and a thick audit folder. You look terrible, Naomi said. Thank you. I meant tired. That is not better. Naomi set down the coffee. The preliminary review found 6 consulting agreements tied to Grant's former business partners. 2 were paid through subsidiaries not disclosed to the board. Refer them to outside counsel. I already did. Madison looked at her. You are enjoying this role. I have been doing parts of it for years without the title. Then take the title. Naomi stopped. Madison pulled a document from the folder. I want you as interim chief operating officer. Naomi studied her face. Are you certain? No. That is unusual. I am learning to make decisions without pretending certainty is the same as judgment. Naomi accepted the document. I will need authority over the regional operations team. You will have it. And final approval on the compliance hires. Yes. And you will stop attending meetings that do not require the chief executive. Madison narrowed her eyes. That was not part of the offer. It is part of my acceptance. Naomi picked up the coffee. Madison almost argued. Then she looked at the calendar on her screen. 11 meetings. 4 of them could be handled by someone else. She canceled 3 and delegated the 4th. Naomi watched without comment. Madison closed the calendar. I am taking the afternoon. Naomi nodded. Good. You do not know where I am going. I do. Madison drove east after lunch. She did not call Ethan. She did not answer his voicemail. Not yet. The mountains rose ahead beneath a clear winter sky. Snow covered the higher slopes, bright against the dark pine forests. For the first time, Madison did not use the drive to prepare an argument. She let the silence remain. When she reached Cle Elum, she turned toward Walter's house instead of the orchard. He was outside near the garage trying to move a large wooden planter with a hand truck. Madison parked and walked toward him. You are not supposed to lift heavy objects. I am not lifting it. You are losing a fight with it. The wheel is stuck. She took the handle from him. Together, they moved the planter beside the porch. Walter sat on the low stone wall to catch his breath. Madison sat beside him. For several minutes, neither spoke. The orchard was visible beyond the western fence. Ethan stood in one of the upper rows, pruning a damaged branch. Lucy followed him with her ledger. When did you know who he was? Madison asked. Walter rubbed his hands together against the cold. About 3 months after he arrived. How an old colleague called. He had heard Ethan left Seattle and moved somewhere east of the mountains. Did Ethan know you knew no? Why did you keep meeting him at the fence? Because he needed coffee. Your coffee is terrible. He never complained. That proves nothing. Walter smiled. Madison watched Ethan guide Lucy's hand as she held the pruning shears. You said you recognized something in him. I did. What? The look of someone who had finally chosen correctly and was still paying for choosing too late. Madison turned toward her father. Do you think leaving Rainier was the correct choice? Yes. Do you think hiding here was Walter considered the orchard? For a time. And now the hiding has become another kind of prison. Madison looked at the fence separating the properties. Walter followed her gaze. You do not need my permission. I know. You are waiting for it anyway. She stood. Walter lifted his tea from the wall. Madison. She turned. He does not need you to rescue him. I know, and Lucy does not need a replacement mother. I know. What do you need? Madison looked across the field. To stop treating every choice like a transaction. She walked toward the orchard. Lucy saw her first. She dropped the ledger and ran between the trees. Ethan turned at the sound. Madison stopped near the fence. Lucy reached her and wrapped both arms around her waist. The force of it nearly knocked Madison backward. You came back. Madison held her carefully. Yes. Did you hear Dad's message? I did. He practiced it twice. Ethan walked toward them. Lucy. What, that was private. You said it where I could hear. I was on the porch. I was standing behind the door that is usually called listening. Lucy released Madison. You should talk. She picked up her ledger and walked toward Walter's property. Madison watched her go. Where is she going? Walter bought contour maps from the 1940s. She thinks he needs supervision. He does. Ethan stopped on the other side of the fence. For several seconds, neither spoke. Madison looked at the cedar rails between them. You apologized. Yes, it was a good apology. I had help. I know. Ethan glanced toward Lucy. Madison placed one hand on the top rail. You were right about one thing. His expression tightened slightly. I did come here because something in my life was breaking. Ethan waited. But I did not keep coming because I wanted to escape it. Why did you? Because this was the first place where no one needed me to perform being certain. The wind moved through the branches. Madison continued. I cannot promise I will never choose work over dinner. I know. I cannot promise I will never try to control everything. I know. I cannot promise this will be easy for Lucy, no. But I can promise I will tell the truth when it is difficult. Ethan looked down at the fence. And if you decide this life is not yours, I will not disappear. Her voice remained steady. I will speak to you. I will speak to Lucy. I will not make silence carry the weight of a decision I am afraid to explain. Ethan looked at her. That is more than most people promise. It is more than I have promised anyone. He rested one hand on the fence. Madison's hand remained inches away. I do not want you to give up Seattle, he said. I am not. I do not want you to become someone else because you think that is what fits here. I could say the same to you. Ethan's eyes lifted. You are allowed to know things, she said. You are allowed to help people. You are allowed to be more than what happened at Rainier. I know. No. You are starting to. A faint smile reached his face. You sound like your father. That is a terrible thing to say to someone. It was meant kindly. It failed. The distance between their hands disappeared. Ethan's fingers closed around hers. There was no dramatic declaration, no sudden certainty, only the warmth of his hand and the quiet understanding that neither of them was being rescued. They were choosing to remain in the conversation. 3 months passed. The independent audit widened. State regulators opened an inquiry into Grant's discretionary accounts. North Star withdrew its proposal and released a statement describing the decision as strategic. Madison did not read it twice. Hale Community Health remained independent. Naomi became permanent chief operating officer. The rural clinics stayed open. Madison created a community advisory council made up of clinic directors, nurses, and patients from smaller towns. Grant had once described those voices as operational noise. Madison placed them near the center of every major expansion decision. She began leaving the office before dark 2 evenings each week. At first, employees assumed she had external meetings. Eventually, they stopped asking. Walter completed cardiac rehabilitation and began walking every morning. He also bought 2 goats, then 2 more. One escaped and ate the lower half of a hedge Ethan had spent a year restoring. Walter blamed the latch. Ethan blamed Walter. Lucy blamed the goat. Madison arrived on a Wednesday afternoon and found all 3 of them chasing it across the road. She removed her coat, stepped into the mud, and helped. No one commented on her shoes. In early spring, Hale Community Health still owned the 6-acre parcel beside the orchard. The board wanted to sell it. Madison proposed another use, a rural wellness center with a community garden, rehabilitation cabins, and weekend health screenings. The plan included orchard education for children and nutrition programs for families who could not easily reach larger clinics. She brought the site drawings to Ethan. They sat at the kitchen table after Lucy went to bed. Ethan reviewed the water lines. You moved the building away from the creek. You were right about the soil. I usually am. That is becoming unattractive. I have been told. He turned another page. This access route crosses the fence. I know. The current easement does not allow it. I know. You would need my permission. Madison looked at him. Yes. Ethan closed the plan. The following morning he began removing the fence. Madison arrived while he was lifting the first cedar post from the ground. Lucy stood nearby holding a shovel. Walter watched from his porch with coffee. Madison walked toward Ethan. You are changing the boundary. The project needs access. You spent months arguing that the access was invalid. It was invalid, and now he set the post in the grass. Now I am giving permission. Madison looked toward the open space. For the project, Ethan met her eyes. Not only the project, they stood where the fence had been. The orchard stretched behind him. The 6-acre field opened toward Walter's house. Lucy carried the shovel toward the greenhouse as though she had already decided the conversation would end well. Madison looked at Ethan. "The first day I came here, I told you my father said you needed a wife. I remember. You said you needed someone who stayed." Ethan looked toward the mountains. "I was wrong." Madison's expression changed. He stepped closer. "I was waiting for someone to prove she would never leave. That is not love. That is fear asking for a guarantee." The wind carried the smell of wet soil and new grass through the orchard. "What do you need now?" Madison asked. "A partner who chooses to be here." He looked directly at her. "Not someone to replace Rachel. Not someone to save the orchard. Not someone to raise Lucy for me." His voice softened. "Someone who understands that staying is not one promise. It is a choice we make again tomorrow." Madison took a slow breath. "I cannot promise I will never be afraid. I know. I cannot promise the company will never pull me back. I know. I cannot promise I will become good at sitting still. That one concerns me." She laughed. The sound moved freely across the open field. Then she said, "I can choose this." Ethan waited. "I can choose you. I can choose Lucy, and tomorrow you can ask me again." He searched her face. There was uncertainty in it. There was fear. There was also truth. From inside the greenhouse, Lucy called Dad. "If you are going to kiss her, do it before Walter comes over." Walter's voice carried from the porch. "I can hear you," Lucy answered. That was the point. Madison covered her face for 1 second. Ethan smiled. "Your father will take credit for this forever. He already has." Ethan touched her cheek. Then he kissed her, not as a promise that grief had ended, not as proof that no one would ever leave, as a choice made in the open space where a fence had once stood. That evening, 3 chairs sat on Ethan's porch. Lucy read on the steps with Rachel's red scarf around her shoulders. Walter drank coffee near the railing and complained that no one appreciated his contribution to the situation. Madison sat beside Ethan with mud on her boots. Her phone remained inside the house. The removed fence posts lay stacked near the orchard. Beyond them, a new gate stood open between the properties. Lucy closed her book. "Are you staying for dinner?" Madison looked at Ethan. Then at the open gate. "Yes," she said. The porch light came on as evening settled over the Cascades. No one asked her how long she meant. Tomorrow would come. They would choose again.